Hey everybody, welcome back to the FSN Education Center. My name is Hannah, and today we're going to work on some monochrome arrangements. Now the first arrangement will be all the way pink with our lovely flowers that we have up here first. And the second arrangement won't necessarily be 100% monochrome, but it will be with a color palette that's very complementary, essentially looking like it's monochrome. But it will be a nice array of peachy colors with a little bit of yellow and a lot of orange and pink. So let's get into it first. So to make our first arrangement, we're going to make a smaller kind of arrangement. So we've got a smaller vase. And we're going to start greening with our beautiful Italian ruscus. Now I like to peel these little off just to give it all the way its nice green natural color. You can leave them on if you'd like. All right, now also with the Italian ruscus, whenever we're working with this, is that it's quite long by nature. So we're going to trim it down on its own, just so that way we don't have to have a very tall arrangement. This isn't necessarily going to be a tall arrangement. So let's do that. We'll cut our sides. And we're just going to start greening from the bottom up. So right now we're just building a nice substantial base for whenever we put our flowers in. We want to interlock and weave these stems through so that way we give ourselves a little grid to work with. So my idea with this is we're going to make it kind of taller on one side and a little lower on the other. Maybe we'll have a little element drooping. So in order to do that, let's add in another kind of green. So we're going to use our eucalyptus, our giant silver dollar eucalyptus. We're going to peel off any of these that we don't want necessarily seen. Maybe they're not as good in coloring, or maybe they're too large, or maybe you just don't like the look of the bottom ones. That's okay. Just go ahead and peel them off. Give them a nice cut. Peel off any on the top. And we're going to go ahead and place it right in. See, for instance, on these, you want to cut a lot of this off just because these greens aren't necessarily very pretty and they won't really add much to our arrangement. So just go ahead and cut those off. I'm going to make a cut there, just because we're going to put them at varying levels. So this piece, as you can see, we kind of droop it a little bit lower, just to have some kind of movement, some kind of something showing where it goes up a little higher on this end and a little lower on that end. So in order to get something to drape, it might be nice to kind of bend it a little bit. Luckily, Italian ruscus is very sturdy, so you can just give it a nice little bend and it won't typically break. So you just bend it a little bit. Scrape off any leaves that might fall into the water, because you don't want them to contaminate your water, because that's the main problem of your water needing to be changed very regularly, is because when water sits with leaves inside of it, the bacteria tends to grow, which ruins the water and in turn ruins your flowers a lot quicker. So if you want long-lasting water with long-lasting blooms, make sure to cut all of the leaves off of the bottom that might touch the water, just to save it some time. All right, now we have our greens kind of how we would like them. We're going to save these eucalyptus for a little bit later, but I am going to separate a little bit of the smaller pieces. So we're going to toss in just a couple of them, just to give it another layer of depth and another nice color of green. You can pile in as much or as little as you would like, as many different kinds as you would like, but I would recommend staying closer to 3 or 4, just because at some point it can start to become a little bit busy. So you want it to look pretty cohesive and not too unraveled. Always making sure that each stem goes all the way down to the water. And fluff out any way that you see fit or that you would like to fluff out. It's just a shape right now, but we are going to start adding in our elements. So first, let's add in our lilies. They're quite large, so they take up the most space. We want to put them a little bit toward the front. We're going to peel off these little pieces here. There we go. We're going to take off any of these bottom leaves. Now we're going to measure kind of how much we want to cut off of the stem based on how tall we want them to stand in our arrangement. So I know that it's about this tall, so that's quite tall for where I want it to be. So I'm going to cut it a little bit down. Now I'm going to place it here. Is this about how tall I want it to be? Maybe a little bit shorter. So let's cut that amount. And let's put it right in the center. All right, so now that we have a big focal flower, let's go ahead and work with some other flowers that are in the same color palette. So these are a little bit peachier, but these are predominant pink. So let's see just where we want to put them. Put them around, but not directly next to, because we don't want it to steal the show. And we don't want to compete with two different flowers in the same exact placement. Right, and I want this one to be a little bit taller because I want it to stand out in the back. So I'm not going to cut it as short as I would the other ones. We're going to cut it maybe about there, maybe a little more. All right, now we're going to move on to our last one. We're going to put it a little lower because we want them to be at varying heights, but we don't want them to look all the same. So we're going to put this one maybe right over here. There we go. Still peeking through. We've got our differences in heights, and we've got our difference in flowers, so they're not overwhelming each other, not competing with each other. They're just in different areas, but they're still pretty complementary. Now we're going to move on to our carnations. We're going to fluff these out a little bit. But remember, we need to be mindful of every angle that we see this arrangement in. So I'm going to go ahead and make this one a little bit lower. We're going to place it kind of towards the back. Just because an arrangement might have a front or a back doesn't mean that all sides don't need to be beautiful. Each side needs to have its own little moments where you look at it and you can appreciate it from every single side. That's why we usually work with turntables, or why we always turn things to look at it around. Just because we don't want something to have a beautiful front and then nothing for the back or nothing for the sides. We want to spread it all the way around. So lastly, we're going to put in our rose. These roses are absolutely beautiful, and there's such a wide range for the petals to go into. Just absolutely beautiful color, beautiful texture. So let's put these in. Now remember that when we're working with roses, we want to work in teams of 3, 5, 7. We want to keep the golden numbers. And we also want to keep out any petals that we don't want seen in the arrangement. For our last rose, we're going to put it right over here. Now this is the perfect time for if you want to put a little bit of extra greens in a certain area. This is certainly the place that you would want to do so. So, like we mentioned before, we're going to grab some of our eucalyptus. Now I'm grabbing the very tall parts because I want it to be able to reach very high up, because I want it to go up over here. So we're going to pull these larger pieces out. And remember, we're going to peel all of the little leaves that might touch the water, and we're going to go ahead and stick them in. All right, and since we wanted to have a somewhat asymmetrical line where it's a little higher on one side and a little lower on one side, we're just going to make it a little bit more apparent. So you see, this is the kind of higher side and this is the lower side. So we're going to emphasize that with our last second greens. Lastly, we're going to put in a little bit of our filler. So for the filler, we have pink wax because, again, we're working with all pink tones. We're working with all monochrome. So we'll peel off a little bit of wax and we'll fill in just the places that we think that it's needed. So now we have it mostly all together. And you can see each color from each side. And we have a high point and a low point. And we have all of our beautiful flowers all together. So now we have this as our first monochrome arrangement. This is all pinks colors, and this is exactly how we want our monochrome to go. Maybe not particularly this style, but we want pink focal, pink filler, lots of nice greenery and filler to kind of emphasize not only the size, but to also emphasize the color of the design. And we want multiple elements with different shades, different hues of the colors, maybe not all 100% the same exact color. For instance, this rose is different from the carnation, which is different from the pomone, which is different from the lily. We have different shades of different flowers, which makes it work very cohesively. So let's move on to our other, which is a very similar, very matching color scheme, but not exactly monochrome. So as you can see, with this first arrangement that we did all monochrome, which means that we did all pinks in different various shades. So we had our light, beautiful pink from the lily, to the same kind of soft pink from the carnation, to a more lively pink from the rose, and a pink but also a little bit of a peach from the pomones. So all of these colors kind of balance each other out. They're all in the same color family, everything. So these are all considered very monochrome. Now this would also be a little bit considered monochrome in the way that it's a similar color structure and the same color scheme. So one sort of blends into the other. So especially in this arrangement, you can see that we start with our pinks here, our very light, vibrant, a little bit more darker pink with the lily, to our more soft pink with the rose, as you can see, to our more orangey, peachy color schemes, such as the snapdragon. We have pink, orange, and yellow represented, which ties in all the colors. And then we have our hot pink and orange carnation, which pulls together that orange colors from the snapdragon as well as the pinks from the other arrangements. And then we also have our yellows. So you see that the yellow has been tied in with the peach and the soft pink color by the tulip. You can see from just the bottom of this tulip that it's nice and pink colored, switching over to a peach into a yellow. So it softly blends in, as well as the ranunculus. These colors are all complementary and these are all in the same color family. So this arrangement is just absolutely lovely. We have all of our colors that blend, and this arrangement is quite lovely because we have all of one color of pink. These two arrangements are quite lovely in and of their own rights, but I just love each of the color schemes on both. Thank you so much for joining our FSN Education Center. My name is Hannah, and I'll see you guys next time.